tonight is called Wisdom books. Basically, we're covering books of the promised Messiah, who is the reformer of humanity according to the promised Messiah and his followers, the Ahmadi Muslim community. Here my friend Munim is a missionary, a devotee, somebody who's devoted his life to spreading and explaining the message of the Prophet Messiah and books like this. So, Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Nice to have you here. Still. And so we're going to be discussing this book, The Philosophy of the Teachings of Islam. And we're going to be going through the contents page to get a feel of this book and see how useful this book is. And Munim is going to try his best to convince us that it is very useful. Okay. And I'm going to give him a hard time. I'll try my best. Okay, well, I'll try my second best. I don't want to try my best. Let's just be evil. Okay, so we're looking at the contents page, and let's give it a bit. I'll give a quick introduction. Basically, it was a speech, and it was a speech based on. It was a competition actually, where somebody invited lots of people about 100 years ago to say, "Listen, prove your faith is the best." And you have to use your holy scripture, because people make up loads of stuff about their faith, so you have to stick to your holy scripture. So for Muslims, it was a Quran, so you had to prove using the Quran that was the best faith, and you had to answer certain questions to prove that, because you can't just say whatever you want. You have to answer certain questions, and the first question is, I don't even know what the first question is. It says, the physical, moral and spiritual states of man. Was that the first question? Is that even a question? And the thing is, even if this guy was not a Muslim who defined the questions, the Promised Messiah decided to make a book of it. So the Promised Messiah decided those questions were good enough. So if we criticize the questions, we're not just criticizing the guy who made this conference where we had to prove their religion was the best. We're criticizing the Promised Messiah for even keeping that question in there. So how can that even be a question? That puts me off straight away. It's not even a question. It says the physical, moral, and spiritual states of man. Not even a question mark there.
Well, actually, this was the first question, because this was the question that was very people could not understand, because the purpose actually of this conference was to prove the importance of spirituality, and to prove and to find out which religion proposed the best ways to achieve a certain relationship with God the Almighty. So the man who prepared this conference thought about this question, because I can understand why. Because this actually, the physical, the natural, and the physical states of man, actually they are the basic principles upon which one can attain spirituality. Because the physical states of man are our natural urges, for example, right? And our natural urges need to be controlled for us to reach spirituality. If, for example, anybody, right, embarks on a spiritual journey, right, he must be aware of what he has naturally, what qualities he has been given naturally, and what qualities he lacks, right? And that is actually what is the physical and natural states of man, right? So what you have already, right? It's not under control. You just have them, right? Some guys get very angry, right? Some guys they're very humble, right? Some guys they have courage. They're courageous by nature, right? It's not under control. So that's the physical and natural states of man. And then the morals, right?
So did the guy who set this conference up, he just said the first chapter, the first question is blah blah blah, physical, moral. I mean, I would be confused if that was a question. I wouldn't know. What's the question?
No, the man who set this out was very wise.
Sure.
He
actually said it like that.
Yeah, I'm not sure how he put it forth.
Well, these books are translated as well, I think.
No, I don't know exactly how he set out the question. I don't know. but it had to be close to this because the Promised Messiah Islam entitled the first chapter like this. So the man, whatever he asked, would have been very close to this. Okay, I don't know
Right.
exactly right now.
Okay, let's move on
Yeah.
because we want to say how good this book is
Yeah.
or not, right?
Yeah.
So, fine. So, you need to know the basic premises on which we build spirituality,
Yes.
right? You
Yes.
need to know this is what you are. This
Yes.
is your toolkit.
Yeah.
How do you move on
Exactly.
from that?
Exactly.
Okay.
And then yeah, slowly, you control your tendencies and you grow in spirituality, and that's what why these conditions are important to understand.
Okay. True morals. Do we need to know about that? True morals.
Yes, in actuality you do, because that's also part of it's in the first chapter, because the physical state is that the tendencies you have naturally, and true morals are those qualities that you have under control, under reason, and you use them at the right time, at the right place and at the right time. So it's very important to know what a moral is and what a natural quality is, right? And there's another chapter here about true courage, right? Because in that chapter the Promised Messiah explains that some people have courage naturally, right? But they don't know when to use that courage in the right circumstance. Sometimes showing courage is not to say something when somebody is abusing you, right? And sometimes courage is to go on the battlefield and fight. And those two instances of displaying courage are called morals once you show them at the right place and at the right time. If
Okay.
somebody, he is naturally courageous, let's say, he is always ready to pick a fight, right? Even he's ready to pick a fight with a woman sometimes who is abusing him, okay? Or sometimes he's picking a fight with 50 guys because he's just really brave. But when he's picking a fight with a woman and slapping her and punching her, that's not courage, So that's what the Promised Messiah is teaching us, that you should learn how to control your qualities and bring them under reason.
All of these can't be questioned because it looks like there's
There are 5 questions,
there are
basic questions,
5 basic questions.
and they're
Okay.
here in the foreword.
Uh-huh. Okay. This is actually helpful in explaining how
Yeah.
to even look at the book.
Yeah, right here.
Okay, so the first question
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
the physical, moral, and spiritual states of man. The second was the state of man after death. Okay, so this book, I'm just trying to. Why would anybody care about the state of man after death? He's dead.
Because at the end of the day, as believers in God, right? Believers in God, we think that, and we know, and we are convinced, we have faith that after this life there's another life, there is an afterlife, and whatever we do in this life will be reflected in that afterlife. That's why it's important, because if we don't have this this conception of an afterlife, then it would really limit what we do in this world to what we do in this world, right?
Yeah, it would be like there is no point of anything.
Exactly.
Just go for it. Let's do everything.
Exactly.
There is no point in
Yes,
anything. Yeah.
exactly.
Okay, fine.
So that's why it's important.
Now I'm getting interesting, right? Okay, this one says the object of man's life and the means to his attainment. So, okay, so this book tells you. So this book answers that question, right? So, something wrong? Right. It's a bit unfair on him because I did tell him we're going to stay on the contents page. So, the object of man's life is the second question. So it's on kind of like it's the bottom of the second page of the contents page. Page 137 would be. But it doesn't actually state that, you see. It doesn't actually state the question. Maybe it should state the question in the contents page. Yeah. Okay, now if you go to the next page after that, or 2 pages after that, it says forward after where you are. So, yeah. Did you go to page 137?
Yeah.
Oh, no, sorry. Okay, contents. Stay on the contents page,
Okay.
and where it says 137 next to it, just like it says, this is the contents page. It says 137 there.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks.
This is a useful guide for everybody anyway, so because they should be comfortable with how to navigate the books. I suppose that's still useful. Okay. Because I think that's one of the issues I have with this book. I just don't know where to start. When I picked this book up, right, I looked at what I was interested in, and I was interested in how do I know God exists. So I read that, and I liked that bit, and I struggled with some of the other bits that didn't seem too relevant to me. Okay. Anyway, so let's we don't. I suppose we don't have to show everything on screen. We can say it and they can hear it, I suppose. Anyway, so let's, as we were saying, the object of man's life and the means to its attainment. Okay. Now, how does this book answer the question? So, what is the object of man's life according to this book? What is it?
The object of man's life is to know his creator and try his utmost to adopt the attributes of his creator within him so as to attain his pleasure and his love. That's the object of man's life.
So to take on God's attributes, his good things about God,
God the Almighty only has good things.
Okay.
To take on those attributes which we can adopt as human beings, because we are limited. For example, God Almighty is the one that raises the dead. God the Almighty is the one that gives physical life. We cannot do that.
Right, okay.
You know? But those attributes, for example, being merciful, being gracious, being a master in one's household, etc.
So does this book explain why you'd want to do that?
No, because this book explains, or this book quotes the basic verse of the Holy Quran, in which God says, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ, which means I did not create man and the jinn except for my worship. So the book quotes this, and for that part, I believe this verse is the basic verse for that part, and after that the promised Messiah starts to explain what this verse means. And it means in actual fact that we have to worship God, and worshipping God means to be fully immersed in Him. And why would we do that? Well, it's simple to answer. It's because that's what we were created to do.
Okay, I'll leave that for now, because I'm not convinced really.
Okay.
Not convinced that we were created or not, but like that doesn't sound very exciting sort of thing.
Okay.
But there are some things that kind of I find intriguing. So good job, Adil. Good job, you found it.
And the verse is that.
It says so in the second question, but it says first insight. That just sounds interesting. What is that all about? First insight. It's part of the second question in the contents page. We were trying to stick with the contents page, Adil.
I don't know. I don't know what's in the first insight. Can I quickly check?
Have a look if you want. Yeah.
143. You're giving me these random words, and I'm like, okay. Okay.
So we're trying to get a feel of this book. Why should we even read it? You know. So Monim's trying to sell it to us, as it were.
So yeah, in this particular section, the promised Messiah talks about the life after death, and the first insight is that at the end of the day, whatever you do in this life will have its reflection on the afterlife. So you should not think that you do an action here and it's forgotten and it's over with. No, but actually you leave an impression on your soul which will be reflected in the afterlife. So that's the first insight, and that's something that's why we should not take our actions lightly, and we should be sure that we always do actions that are pleasing to God.
So the insight was that we somehow realize whatever we do affects us. Was that the insight? Is that what you're trying to say?
That's whatever we do affects us, as well as yeah, that death is not a new phenomenon. I quote here from the page 143, that death is not a new phenomenon, and all its manifestations are reflections of this life. Basically, yeah, that's what it is.
So explain that. I don't know what that means even. What you just said.
Basically, when you die,
Yeah.
you know, a chapter closes,
Yeah.
but a new chapter is about to open.
So what do you mean by death is not a new phenomenon? What does that mean? I don't even understand what that means.
For example, here in this life, you know, when you go to sleep,
Right.
okay, that's a kind of a death too, you know,
Right.
but
okay.
it's not permanent.
Sure.
It's not permanent.
Sure.
But already in that state of slumber, you know, that's exactly what's going to happen after your death. When you dream things.
So it's not a new phenomenon to us.
Exactly.
In our very lives.
Exactly.
We don't just die once. It happens to us quite often.
Exactly.
All every day.
Exactly.
Right.
So death, when it comes, yeah, it'll be permanent. But already we have a taste of this in this life.
So what it means by first insight is like, here's an idea. Consider this. Okay.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
That sort of thing.
Yes.
So, and the idea is that should kind of open our eyes.
Yes.
Is that so just hang on. Don't think that we're going to die and nothing else is going to happen, because we do this every day.
Yes.
We die
Yes.
and we get out of that. We die. So this death that ends our life in this planet, don't think that's the end of it.
Exactly. And even
Right.
in dreams, when we dream, when we sleep, we see another world. It's not really tangible, but we are in it, right? It's like we are in it. So it's a spiritual thing that we are seeing. So we should reflect upon this. You know, that dreams and all this mean more than what we believe. Sometimes.
Okay. That is every person's deeds have we fastened firmly to his neck, and on the day of judgment we shall make them manifest and shall place them before him in the form of a book. That sounds different to what we were talking about. So this is saying that the effects of what we do have a permanent effect on our soul or something.
Yeah, well, that's what I was saying before.
Right.
Before you asked
okay.
me about the insight, and I checked the
Oh,
book.
okay.
Yeah.
I get
Yeah,
confused.
yeah.
All right. Okay. Sure. One of the things I have a problem with this book is that it confuses me. I'm like, okay, I don't normally get that confused when reading a book.
No, this book could be confusing because it deals with such subject matter which is very profound, right? And if you think that the promised Messiah Islam wrote this book, wrote this speech, keeping in mind that he had to answer a different set of questions, the questions are not necessarily linked, right? Because these are not the promised Messiah's questions.
Sure.
These are the questions of this gentleman. I think he was a Hindu.
Right.
He invited them. So, yeah, the different questions are not necessarily linked, but if you read the question themselves, it makes perfect sense and is very profound and very interesting.
Right. Okay. Let's have a look at another bit. So we've only got like a few minutes left. 6 minutes. The object of man's life and the means of it. No. Fourth question. Let's look at this bit here. So the fourth question is the operation of the practical ordinances of the law in this life and the next. So what does that mean? You can read it if you want. Number 4.
The operation of the practical ordinances of the law in this life and the next. I think this is a bit what we were talking about. Yeah, because here the promised Messiah Islam is saying that it's on page 177 that we have already stated that the effect of the true and perfect divine law upon man's heart in this life is that it lifts him from a savage condition and converts him into a human being, and thereafter invests him with high morals and finally makes him godly. So basically is what we were talking about, and that we progress as time goes in spirituality. I guess I'm not sure.
Okay.
We'll come back to that next time. I'll read it and we'll come back
Okay, sure.
because I'm not sure.
Okay.
Not sure.
What else is interesting, or what kind of catches my eye? Okay, a characteristic of Islam. It just says that. Do you vaguely remember what that's what about? Is it really hard to just, if I pick out something like that? It's
Yes,
really hard to
it
remember
is
what I'm
because
thinking
in the
about?
context, and I didn't read it.
Completely unrelated as well.
Yeah, and I did not read it today. And you're just giving me a characteristic of Islam. I can think of 1,000 characteristics of Islam that could be talked about in this book.
Okay. You live and learn, hey. So somehow maybe this isn't the best way of going about.
But no,
Okay,
but no.
let's
Next time, we're gonna pick out a couple of topics.
But you see, I wanted to get an overview. I wanted to be impressed before we even go into.
No,
the
but
book.
I mean, if like we were talking, it was fine, right? But if we go too much, you have to read and you have to know specifically what's talked about.
Okay.
The beginning portions, of course, one remembers them, right?
Okay, so
But-
what we can talk in general, right? So
Yeah.
let's talk in general for the next 2 minutes. And so the sources of divine knowledge. Why do we care about the sources of divine knowledge?
Because without divine knowledge, you
Mm.
cannot attain anything, and so
Really, you can't just figure stuff out logically.
that's the thing. We as human beings, we're very limited in our understanding, so we do need God the Almighty to show us ways so that we can understand Him, or try to understand Him, because one can never fully comprehend God the Almighty, but to come near Him or to gain God's like closeness or love, you have to have something that comes from Him. Without it, you cannot do anything out of your own. Yeah, we have mental capacities, we have logic, right? But even logic and the greatest mental capacities cannot make up for divine revelation. And without divine revelation, you are stuck, and you are basically like a blind man, in the dark.
Some writers say that they're inspired, right? And they don't say it's all due to us.
Yes.
They just say they just wait to be inspired by an idea, and they either say it's God or something, but
Yes.
they don't say it's just us, because they have that humility to realize
Yes.
it's that. So maybe there's something beyond what you are just capable
Yeah,
of.
exactly.
There's some amazing stuff, and any writer, any entrepreneur probably appreciates that anyway.
Oh, and scientists also.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Like I don't know what is Einstein said. Okay, let's not go into stuff I don't know 100% sure about, but I have heard the same. Right. Okay. Cool. We tried our best. Hope you enjoy the program. Give us some comments. Go to whyIloveislam.org and go to the contact page and contact me. I'm running the website as well, so tell me what could we do to improve the program. Thank you for listening. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.